systemic approaches. So both of those are kind of, we're looking at both of those components, both the, issues that we also raise ourselves, as well as issues that our internal reviewers raise and external reviewers raise. So it's really comprehensive governance. I feel like there's always a fire to fight, but I kind of like that. One of the things we were talking in these prep sessions, we had multiple prep sessions for this call, but one of the things we really talked about was like the path to these kind of roles. Really, like, what I encourage you to do is don't be like, oh, I want to go into operational risk. I want to go into risk because like these speakers sound interested about it. I would be like, look internally what you love to do in your day-to-day, and how do you maximize so what you love to do every day becomes more of your day and your job. I love to problem solve. I love to problem solve. I love to make decisions, quick decisions. I love to help people in their careers. And so I really like managing. So I always want to manage. So for me, I think a lot of my day is focused around the things that I love, because that's what I've focused my career on. Yes, there's really annoying things like administrative tasks that have to get done, but everyone has to do that. But I would just say that a lot of my day is governance, oversight, policies, issues. I sometimes joke, I do what everyone doesn't want to do, but that's because I love doing that. So I joke that my job is to clean the kitchen sink, because people throw plates, bowls, cups, whatever, right? There's all sorts of things that are thrown at you, and you're having to kind of run it and fix it. And I see that a lot, like almost like running a business, because you're constantly given, problems. How do I solve this? How do I solution this? So for me, I kind of say like, I'm like the governance kitchen sink.
Yeah, it's I echo a lot of what Marta just said, certainly. And it's, my day-to-day is very different, but what I will touch on real quick is Marta's point about identifying what it is you like. Now, going back to my beginning and how I started, I didn't know this, but once I started in this business, I always knew that I'd like to be product oriented, right? So I knew that there was a period of time where I was not product oriented. I didn't like that. I didn't like being too far away from the business, too far away from trading, from sales, from the middle office. I didn't like it. So when I was looking to identify opportunities, I wanted something that was still going to be close to the business, but not necessarily the experiences that I had prior. And I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't particularly, managing people is not, I'm okay not managing anyone. I've done it. I have done it. I've had teams as large as, I think, 11 or 12, whatever it is, not the biggest organization, but, I've managed anywhere from 1 to 12, and it's fine, but it's not something that I necessarily look for and is interested in now. As you continue to move up, it's going to naturally happen. That's just part of the business. But in my day-to-day is because because I am aligned to a product, the equities business. There are framework activities and strategic reviews that are required by the second line as part of a robust control environment. So there are new product initiatives that I am involved in daily. The business convenes a group of 50, 60 people from every area within the bank that has a seat at the table, discusses a new business initiative, and then I listen to everyone talk. I ask questions, I chat, I push back on certain areas where they may say no, where someone may say yes. There is a strong control environment to mitigate this risk, and my job is to say, well, is it? And obviously with backup, not just to push back just for the sake of pushing back, but there has to be, it's understanding your business, it's understanding your product, it's understanding the legal entity, various things that come together that put that into perspective. So there's that part of it. Then I often engage in thematic risk reviews where we look at the operational risk losses within the equities business. And we say, okay, this seems to be occurring a lot. We haven't lost a lot of money necessarily, but there certainly is that risk exists, that even though you may have lost 10,000 today, that could easily be 10 million tomorrow. So we perform these thematic risks, and we speak with everyone from technology to trading to sales to all the different stakeholders to understand a little bit more about the process. We look at it from a global picture also. We don't look at it regionally, because we want to apply best practices and a standard across all of Citi's regions. And these things take months. They take months. And so, and then there's the fire drills that do come up. So there are some activities that I perform on a day-to-day that I know tomorrow that I'm going to have to do, and next week that I'm going to have to do. But then there's also the ad hoc support that you provide to the business and to the organization.
Okay, so let's contextualize this a bit. I know earlier when we first started, we mentioned first, second, and third line. For those people who are not aware, maybe let's spend a minute on that just to expand on it, and then maybe give a scenario whereby someone within the first line is handing off information to the second line, and then audit is getting involved, blah, 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 across the different organizations, and how there's synergies across the organization. So maybe let's look at that, and then maybe talk about how, if you're starting out, if there's a better, maybe where to start off in the first place. How do you know whether it should go to the first line or second line, or even go to audit in the first place? So maybe let's look at that.
Yeah, so from a lines of defense perspective, this is actually like a regulatory guidance from the regulators, the OCC. So it's the Office of the Comptroller and the Currency, and the Federal Reserve. And if you look up OCC and something called heightened standards, I believe it's 12 CFR Appendix D, sadly, that I know these references, but
that is quite good that you were able to just to reference that.
I was part of the regulatory mapping at Citi back in the day, so I feel like I know every reg mapping now. But there's first, second, and third line defense. It came out of the financial crisis, and the view of the regulators was the following: that the first line of defense is the area that predominantly takes the risk. Traditionally, in a very formulaic perspective, you can think of that as the business, the markets business, the corporate banking business, investment banking, right? Consumer banking. Think of that as the business predominantly. There's also first line is you take risks also within the risk division, even though we're not first line, but I'll explain that a little bit later. So first line is traditionally business. Second line of defense, very strict, is only two areas: compliance and independent risk. And different institutions merge them differently. Some banks have overall independent risk in one division, which covers both compliance and independent risk. And independent risk overall, when I'm referring to compliance and independent risk, I'm referring to the risk stripes the regulators define. So they define it as compliance risk, operational risk, market risk, credit risk, liquidity risk, strategic risk, reputational risk. Those are the predominant risk categories. So the role of second line of defense, the independent risk functions, is to oversee the businesses that is taking the risk as a second line of defense, meaning that if the business takes the risk themselves, they're responsible for it. They're responsible for monitoring and overseeing that risk. But the second barrier is independent risk. So if something slips through first line, second line is a sign of a second component to check on what the first line is doing, overseeing those risks. Risk also typically sets the frameworks around it, and kind of think of it as, like, I like to say, we set like the playpen where the business can play in, right? So we kind of create the box where this is where you can play, this is where you do your business. And then if you go out of that, you breach what are called typically risk appetite or metrics or things like that. And the third line of defense is Citi's internal function of, and not Citi, I should just say all banks' internal function of independently reviewing all areas of the bank, right? So if it slips through first line, it slips through second line, third line is kind of the final catch, and they audit and review all different areas. Now, what's interesting is Alex is in second line of defense operational risk. I am also in second line of defense within a group called Special Assets Group, which is the distressed workout team at Citi. But I'm not doing a second line traditional role. I'm not managing the credit risk that the team's managing. The team is predominantly a credit risk team, overseeing distressed credit. So we're about to have a lot of things come in as we enter this likely recession. So my role in governance is to ensure that we follow the processes and procedures that we do. We oversee that compliance and operational risk within special assets. So I have like an in business, not business big B, but little b, operational risk role. And my counterparts that come and challenge me are people like Alex and others. He's not covering our area, but we have similar operational coverage for the risk division, as well as other functions within the organization. Just so that you can understand that first, second, and third. So I'm in second line, but I'm acting more within a first line capacity to manage the operational risk that second line distressed credit is undertaking by executing their processes, if that makes sense.
No, thanks for the very detailed description. Alex, do you want to add something? Yeah.
I mean, if, would be hard to add to that. Marta covered that quite well, much better than I could have in a very clear and concise way. I will say that in terms of best practices, right? So to Marta's point, you take the risk, you own the risk, but then as I was mentioning earlier, the business, we could talk about my area, equities. The equities business may not realize that there are these thematic contributing factors to these losses that continue, and they might be small, because when you make several hundred million or billions of dollars in revenue and you lose a fraction of that, that might be within what Marta was referring to as appetite or threshold. So my role then is to say, well, okay, I'm going to take a step back from that. I don't own the risk. I'm not taking the risk, but I'm here to look at your business horizontally and from 10,000 feet and say, okay, I'm seeing multiple reoccurring issues, and I want to get ahead of that. Why? Because I don't want audit. I don't want audit to get it. And then I certainly don't want an external audit to find it, or our regulators to find it during our annual reviews, right? So it's always best to self-identify. Now, is it bad if audit finds it? No, it's not bad if audit finds it, but audit then is going to say, well, how come you missed it, Alex, in ORM? Okay, so the business missed it. How did you miss it? Now we're finding it. And then if the external regulators or the external audit finds it, then there becomes remediation efforts that don't always look good for the bank, and that's where you start to see things in the press, and you start to see what is referred to, Marta mentioned earlier, as reputational risk. So my role at very high level is really just to but to be a sanity check on the control environment that the business owns, and to say, yes, I agree. I'm giving you an independent view that I think that is, you have a robust control environment, and you are properly assessing the risks that are pertinent to your business. Kind of sign off on that, and there's many different forms as to how that sign off occurs, and then the audit will come in, whatever cycle they're on, to either assess the business overall, or just a desk, one desk at a time, whatever it is that they choose to do. And the hope is that the issues that audit identifies, we have already identified also, and have a plan in place, so audit doesn't say, well, everyone's been blind to this doesn't look good.
Okay, so there's one thing that we've been circling around, which is essentially, like in Martha, your case is wholesale credit risk, right? what is that? And when we talk about that in general, like if someone is curious as to what that business involves, what does that mean? Versus Alex on your side, which is the markets business and equities business, what is that, just to get this to fit into people's heads to say, okay, maybe I'm doing this, or I think maybe I would like to do something, like to help that internal introspection exercise as well.
Yeah, so like basic credit risk in general, as the risk is defined as like basically the risk of your counterparty not being able to pay you back. Think of it very like, so when you have a credit default swap, let's say, and I'm going to give it in the context of markets, because credit risk isn't just within banking and corporate banking. It's traditionally in the banking areas of corporate banking, where you're lending on a traditional loan, you give out a loan, the counterparty that you're taking on credit risk because you're giving the loan based on the credit quality of that institution. So you're analyzing their balance sheet, you're analyzing their income statement, you're analyzing their capacity to repay you, and then you make loans, right? And in a bank, those loans get classified into what's called regulatory classifications defined by the Office of the Comptroller, the Currency, or the OCC. So credit risk traditionally is looking at corporate banking, traditionally, when you think of it like vanilla banking when it originated, but it also looks at counterparty credit exposure in the markets business on credit default swaps, interest rate swaps, where you've got a counterparty that, yes, you have market risks on an interest rate swap on rates moving, right? Probably lots of volatility as rates move up and up right now, right, from an interest rate perspective. But if that counterparty that you're facing at Citi or any other bank is not able to pay you back when the interest rate moves out of their favor and they owe you a payment, that is what is called credit risk if they can't pay you back. So in every transaction, even in markets, you have credit risk, you have market risk in markets, you also have credit risk in markets. But traditionally, when people think of credit risk, you're thinking of general lending, but it's two lenses. It's both what they call the exposure on like a lending basis, and also the exposure on derivatives and counterparties.
Okay, thanks for that, Alex.
Yeah, the institutional client group at Citi is it includes the investment bank, and within the investment bank, right, that's our investment bank, and within that organization, within that structure, there's the markets business. So even though markets fits into this wholesale credit risk group, that's a fairly new designation for the market operational risk management team. We've only recently kind of made that transition, so we're not yet, it's not fully formed, and it's not fully realized as to how exactly that's going to fit in. I'm sorry, not that how it's going to fit in, but how structurally how it's going to look in terms of the day-to-day. Someone like myself, it's a little bit more cut and dry than perhaps what Marta was speaking about. Certainly in her function as well, she has a much wider breadth of scope. For me, within markets, there are the products, rates and currencies, FX, global spread products, equities, commodities. I have my one silo, my one pillar that I focus on, and all of those things. So I don't necessarily, when we have operational risk events that occur, I am not the expert in anything outside of even within operational risk. There's multiple pillars, right? There's 9 or 11 pillars, whatever it is, but then there are the others: market, liquidity, credit. But I will engage with those individuals, and from my perspective, I will challenge, not challenge, I will work with them so we can challenge the business on whether or not the risks are being identified properly, and whether or not the control environment is sufficient to mitigate those risks.
Okay, so let's now get into more scenario depictions. We have people who are just starting out their careers, right? If they want to get into this business, how do they get in? right? Is it a matter of taking some Excel trainings and maybe going to get some Coursera programs and maybe going to a few networking sessions and then maybe that's it, call it a day? Or the other side too, if they already have some experience, maybe they're working as lawyers, they know some regulatory aspect of it, right? But not necessarily within the financial world. If they want to make a transition, right? If they're maybe working as UX designers, but then you're really curious about how this whole thing works. Like, where do they start out from, and how do they transition to be able to get into this space?
So I think from like a, like, let's kind of break it up, people that have experience in the workforce and those that are coming out of like university. So those coming out of university, I would just say, don't think of the job, like start to think of the people that you're interacting with, whether you're networking on campus or you're networking at your career center. Like I always say, take the people, not the job. Like I say it to everyone, really take the people, not the job, because you could be doing terrible work, but love the people. And then you all of a sudden love your job. But if you love the work and you don't love the people you're working with, it's a very bad combination. So what I would just say is really focus on what, like, to me, out of college, I was like, I really want to learn about finance. I only know econ. So I was looking for broad-based programs, right? But if you know you want to go into risk management, first of all, applaud you for even knowing what risk management is in college. But if you do want to go into risk management, like start to understand the different risk types, start networking, go on LinkedIn, go on your alumni websites, your career center, and just start networking. Networking, I think, is so critical. Go to your career fairs, understanding what does it mean? What are the different risk roles? Because it's not just in bank. Risk roles exist everywhere. In fact, they exist more and more now because regulatory institutions like Amazon now are regulated by like the Fed, right? Like the Fed is regulating Amazon now too, right? They're regulating all sorts of people. You go, if you look at Meta right now on their website, they have website posts for governance and operational risk oversight. Tons of companies have this. It's definitely not just banking. If you're experienced and you're seeing that you have a desire to go into risk, I would first of all, do a lot of like soul searching on like, why is it? What is it you like to do? I always just say soul searching is kind of the way to figure out what you love to do and what you don't like to do. Like I used to think, right, if you're not a trader, you're nobody. Okay. Then I went into trading and I hated it. And I will never do trading again. But I used to have this like view, probably like a lot of people in college, like if you're a trader, you've made it in life. Like, thank God I'm not a trader. I did that and I certainly didn't make it in life. So I think, some of those things are like, what do you really love to do? Like, what is it about you? What is it about like MARTA for me that like makes me like controls, like governance, like that stuff? So do a lot of soul searching and then just start talking to people, companies, businesses. And then if you really want to like, don't have time for all that networking, you want to start taking courses, of course you can take courses. There's always extended learning. I know some people here from NYU. NYU has great courses for continuing education, as do many other schools. But I think it's more like, it's easy to see what other people like. It's harder to think introspectively and spend the hours to say like, what do I like? It's very easy to be like, oh, I think, Alex likes operational risk in markets and he likes products and equities. Like I know nothing about equities. Like I will just put it out there and I know nothing about it, right? And I don't have that interest in learning more about equities. But he does, right? So it's more about, what do I think I like, right? What do I desire? Like what keeps me jazzed each day? That's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, the networking, the networking is the biggest thing. It really is, and I know that sounds easy to say. And I know it's not easy. I know it's very difficult. We send out LinkedIn messages, we send out emails. Everything goes into goes into the universe and never comes back. It's frustrating. I certainly understand. and I've been there. Even in my own career, I've tried to network with people, former coworkers, people, former bosses, and even then, you know, people ignore you. It's a strange, you know, it's kind of one of these things, out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately. But I would say that certainly agree with Marta there. The networking is probably the biggest thing. Certifications, a degree, extended learning, all great things. I think if you, let's take it from a college student, certainly there are the internship opportunities, and there are entry level programs that many of the banks these days are really trying to focus on, because I've seen the shift in my 18 years. I've seen the shift to never appealing to the entry level publicly. I mean, of course, there was always the internship programs and things like that, but publicly, the banks never really made an effort to identify new talent coming right out of college. Right, so that I've seen that shift. So that's great. If you are an experienced professional already, whether it's in another field, I think you look for opportunities within the organization, not necessarily specific to what it is you want to do. And you look for something that might be related. So if you're interested in risk management, maybe you take a role in a middle office or an operations group, and you, as a way to begin to get experience in the organization. And to Marta's point, I after 18 years, I 100% agree. You choose the manager, not the job. The people, it's always people over the job. It has to be. You spend, as we all know, you spend the majority of your day with these individuals. Okay, it's a little different now. You know, everyone's still kind of hybrid and work from home. Whether or not that ever changes, who knows? But at the end of the day, you will be spending the most hours of your day with these people. You always want to be around people that are not necessarily like-minded, but are driven. You want people who are excited to be where they are, like, to use Marta's expression, that are jazzed up about their day. And that helps, that will help you as well. And you know, I just think it's not one thing, it's a lot of different things, and it's a lot of different things playing at one time. And it's also expanding your horizon a little bit, and not being so narrowly focused, because then you might miss a lot of things outside of that focus.
Okay, so we have just about 10 minutes. And before I hand off to the audience, ask any questions, there's one key thing that I wanted to ask. So let's say you get into risk after doing all the networking and all the classes and everything. Does that mean that there's no exit opportunities? Am I stuck in risk? What if I'm getting and I realize I really don't like this place? Does that mean that I can't transfer my skills elsewhere? Am I stuck doing governance for the rest of my life, or learning about one product which I realized that I really can't stand this product and the people, of course, within the space, like maybe the experience of the trading part? Does that mean that I'm stuck? Or how do I think about that going forward if you're, you know, putting a career plan together?
No, I mean, I think personally, like, you're never stuck in your career. It often you can feel stuck. I mean, a couple months ago, I felt stuck on something, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, I got to change careers, right? And then I was like,
Well,
no,
when
I'm
you're
just having
working
a
at 4 o'clock in the morning on your vacation, I get it. I
exactly,
get
right?
it.
Exactly. No, but so, you know, like, you have moments, right, where you want to shift and stuff like that. And I think that's perfectly fine. But I would say the bottom line is, it's easy to say you're stuck and you can't shift. It's harder to do the work to do it. I have shifted from product control, doing P&L, to trading, to risk, to running different risk teams, to going back in special assets risk. And I've done it all by sheer, like, grit and determination and networking and talking to people. A lot of the times, careers came to me, like, jobs came to me. I didn't really apply to many jobs. A lot of people were like, I need this fixed. Let's call Marta and she might want to run this group. And so that's how it would work. But I think you're never stuck. When you think you're stuck, take a moment, take the day off, do whatever relaxes you, hiking, yoga, whatever it is. Think about yourself and really ask yourself the tough questions. Why do I think I'm stuck? Because you own your life, you own your career. No one is tying you down. There might be tie downs of visas and things like that, but ultimately you own it. So no, once you're in risks, you're not stuck. Is it harder to transition as you get older in your career? Yes. As a managing director, I can't be like, oh, I want to go back to trading and be an MD on a desk. Okay, but I don't want to, so that's fine. But I am watching things outside of banking and outside the industry and saying like, a lot of other institutions are being governed by places that are less strict in the OCC. Should I leave banking and so I have to don't deal with that all the time? Or do I want to keep going this path? I ask myself that all the time. But it's really like, you know, you are the person that moves your career forward. So like, put on your running shoes and start running.
Yeah, I can't really say much more than that. It's 100% true. You were never stuck. You were never stuck. I've gone from a back office role to a middle office role to consulting, now into a second line operational risk role. You were never stuck. Sometimes it may take you a while to get out of that role or to find because to be fair, I've never done the type of soul searching that Marta just described, and you know, at this point in my life now, I understand the importance of that, is to really have a focused plan, and it doesn't happen overnight. So, you know, you gotta, won't spend too much more time on it, but I would never want anyone to feel like they're stuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to turn the tables over to the participants. If you guys, if you want and you're shy, you can ask the question. You can always type it in the chat window. I will ask it on your behalf. But if you want to speak up too, you can definitely raise your hand, and then I'll call on you so that you can ask your question. Any question for myself, the speakers, any questions?
Yeah, hi. Just had one question.
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate all the advice and information you guys gave. To quickly just introduce myself, my name is John, and I'm currently a first-year analyst within the risk management program at Citi, working in a second line team where we do credit, consumer credit reviews and oversights. Specifically, just a question for Alex. Being in an ICG risk role, would you say that your role is a little more maybe like 1.5 line of defense, as in like how often are you kind of interacting with teams within the institutional client group and the equity traders, as opposed to kind of, you know, staying within your second line group and monitoring that risk?
Sure. So I would not say it's 1.5, and the reason I'll say that is because when I was at Barclays, my last role at Barclays was in their chief controls office, and the chief controls office was the expectation there was that you were a horizontal view across the investment bank, and so you did not focus on any risk category. Wasn't operational risk, wasn't market credit. You literally had a horizontal view. So we were not in the second line, but we were not in the first line, but we were a control function. So that's more like a 1.5. Where I am now is a very traditional, very prescriptive second line role. Yeah, it's I am on a daily basis down on the trading floor, speaking with the business managers, the CAOs, in business risk team. I don't often speak with trading and sales. I speak with middle office a lot more, but I can at any time. I mean, it's not it's just the way that the business is kind of set up, and the structure of the first line. You have your front office, you have your traders, salespeople, then you have your CAOs, your business managers, and you're in business risk. So, you know, I go through those three teams and don't really have to bother trading. If I have to, certainly there's nothing between us that would prevent that. So I can be on the floor with the traders or salespeople at any time.
And John, you might be asking that because since you're in consumer credit, right? Like
Right.
normal risk teams, not like yours is not normal, but I'm just saying is the other risk stripes you're interacting often with the business that you're covering. In consumer risk, it's more of a portfolio approach where you're looking within like their limits and their boundaries, but like traditional wholesale credit, you're interacting with the clients, the business, everything.
Right, of course.
So everyone has that component of interaction on a second line basis.
Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate
So
that.
awesome. Thank you so much, John. Someone just posted a question into the Don. I believe that was you.
And we have a
posted
hand up,
in-
and we have a hand up as well.
Okay. So I'm going to read it from here. What's the future of risk management in the banking industry? Are you noticing any trends? Is the field going to continue to grow, or will it wane as we try to balance profit versus risk? Any general thoughts?
So Citi is like a little bit in the doghouse, as are some other financial institutions for shrinking their risk divisions. And so part of the consent order that you can read publicly around Citi is around growing the risk management capability. And the growth has probably already occurred, right? I think industry-wide, the trend will continue to be empowerment of the second line of defense versus the business running the show. So I think the empowerment, the sizing, I think a lot of companies have right-sized that now, but I think it's empowering that independent risk to help guide and restrain and grow the business, because it's not just putting reins, it's also thinking, partnering with them on growth opportunities too. So
Okay.
Or, right, like what did wasn't Mario Andretti? Maybe it was Mario Andretti that people, even professional race car drivers, think that the brakes are meant to stop the car. I mean, it's and most professional race car drivers will tell you the brakes are not there to stop the car. They're there to control your ability to move faster and to move throughout the course. It's absolutely true. And to Marta's point, there is absolutely no shortage of growth within the risk management space in general, on a macro level within the banking industry, because of unfortunately very public events that have occurred that have been very poor. They've been very big reputational effects on the banks.
Okay. So there's one more question that the person, Kofi Mensah, is asking. He's curious as to why you didn't like your trading experience. This goes to you, Martha.
it's just not for me. Like I don't do well in a BAU environment where like you do the same thing every day. And traditionally trading, you're making markets. And I was in like the syndication, so primary issuance, so like you're doing deals and it's very like your day is kind of planned out. I like more fire drill, dealing with structuring of change management, putting controls in place, governance. That was really it. It just wasn't like, I couldn't imagine like every day going in and like trying to syndicate another deal. Like it was just kind of boring to me, but that was me, right?
Okay, so we have a hand. Jason Terme, do you want to ask a question? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Kwesi, and thank you for organizing this session, and thank you to the speakers as well. I'll keep it brief because I know we're reaching time. So I'm a Mountbatten intern. I've been working with Citi Private Bank since 2021, and I've been in New York for a few months. So yeah, very enjoying the opportunity I've had. I just wanted to ask a quick question. I work within business initiatives. I've worked with the risk department many times in many different projects, and it does have some interest to me, but my main interest is trying to foray more into tech. I just wanted to ask, because I've met a lot of managers within business risk that have asked me about if I'm interested in it going forward and opportunities. And I've always kind of asked them, what is the scope within business risk in terms of like tech, like data analysis and things like that. So I just wanted to ask you guys, Alexander, as well. What is the scope for like tech within business risk going forward?
I speak with my tech partners every day. Every single day. There's a team, there's a tech and cyber team that is aligned to the markets operational risk management group. And there's almost nothing. Yeah, I would say no, 99% of what I do, I involve them every single day, because the technology, gone are the days of ticket ordering, right? So there's no more picking up a phone, writing a ticket, and having a runner run it down to communicate it to the trading floor and have an order executed. Those days are over. So everything is tech oriented now. Every system, even if there's a manual nature to the process, everything is still technology oriented. And it's just, and you said data analysis. We do a ton of data analysis, both from a tech perspective, which I don't do because I certainly am no tech expert, but I take metrics that the tech team may provide based on their review, and then I use that for whatever I may need it for. So the interaction between whenever I do a thematic risk review, I always include operations and technology. You have to. You cannot get a comprehensive view of a business without including operations and technology. There are other groups as well. I'm certainly not suggesting that it's only those two, but those two are absolutes. And as Kwesi mentioned earlier, please feel free to reach out. Anyone, please, if you have additional questions and you realize we're just trying to be brief, and I'm okay to stay on if I have a few more minutes, if others are as well. But if you want to have additional conversations about this, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay on too, Kwesi, if you want to answer.
Awesome. Okay, I was just about to ask that. Okay, so I know Maria has a hand raised up next. So Maria, do you want to go? Then we have G1 Choi next afterwards.
Hi, really quick. I'm Carmen Ruiz. I live in Mexico. And I want to tell you, I've been in risk management for 27 years and started in Banamex, which is right now City Banamex. So we started in a area that wasn't even risk management. So we had to talk with the central bank and with the Mexico SEC to start making regulation, because the traders didn't understand it, right? Because there are a lot of numbers, a lot of macros and volatilities, etc. And Mexico, and all of you that maybe live in the US or in another country, Mexico is a country that has volatility since forever. So we are used to that. So thanks. And I back up. Thank you, Marta and Alexander, because of everything that you've said. I've passed it also. Well, I've been there in Mexico also. And for example, well, if you live in Mexico, there's the risk management area right now that controls everything. And sometimes I felt like, am I doing the right thing? It's just numbers and numbers, just digital things and macros and profit and losses. But then I moved to Veracruz, which is a smaller town, and I felt like I'm a risk manager. I can change to any bank, and they only had private banking. So I was like, what am I going to do in private banking? I cannot talk to people. I can talk to the numbers, to the huge databases and to macros, etc. So when I go to the people and then started telling them about their risk and their funds, etc., then I realized that risk management is the best area in the world, because it gives you a lot of things, a lot of tools to have some other areas of development, right? So for all the audience that might think that, should I do this or that, risk management is a great area to begin with. And then in risk management, when I was in private banking, then the 2009 crisis started. So then I knew the people. I knew the people that had their businesses, that had their money, and thanks to the risk management area, they are not broken right now, and they had all the risk control. So right now I'm in corporate treasury LATAM in the interest rate banking book. So checking all the treasuries in LATAM. So right now I'm really, really confident that we are doing a great job. All the banks, wherever you enter. And as Marta said, also the companies that have risk management areas, this is what it's for, is so that real people with real life, with real houses and jobs, conserve their jobs and their quality of life. That's
Awesome.
just wanted to.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Carmen.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you enjoy? You're next.
Hi, thank you so much. So my name is G, and I am a recent graduate from TGA actually, and I come from quite a different background. So I ended up studying energy and environmental policy. So I'm very much in just starting off as an energy and climate policy professional. But my previous background actually is in project and program management with architecture as well as social impact, employee engagement. So I actually had some projects with City at the corporate headquarters. It's really fun. So, having brought this kind of social side of projects to businesses, I have been very interested in bringing the environmental side, the climate side. So I was just wondering if you are familiar with the climate risk programs at City and what, how you work with them, etc.
Yeah, so there's a huge focus on climate risk now. They built out a new climate risk division within the CBNA Chief Risk Office. And there's also another division that's existed for a long time on the ESRM function, which is, I want to say it's environmental and social risk management. So, and that is within risk as well. There's a lot of people that focus on climate, and they also focus on environmental risks. So things like palm oil, like financing of palm oil, financing of oil in general, right? Sands, like there's a lot of controversy around sands financing, right? Or oil refineries, etc. So there is a specific division. There's also one on climate. I think all the banks are being pressured across the board on this, both from active investors as well as from regulators, and rightfully so. But I actually think all companies are really starting to deal with this, because also your location of where your company is, like we have a bunch of offices in Tampa, and I always say to myself, like, why do we have so many offices in Tampa when like there's so much flooding that can happen and everything? And like every scientist in the world is saying move north and away from water. So like I think there's a lot of components of it, but definitely the regulators are big on climate right now and big on environmental but the ESRM team was formed a lot because Citi signed the Equator Principles. And so we do abide by the Equator Principles. We were one of the first banks to do that. So we had a division on that, but now we're building out a broader climate risk division.
Yeah, I wish I had more to add to that. I am less familiar with that. I do know, however, that someone within operational risk, one of my colleagues in London, was recently received a certification. I don't know if it's ESG in general or if it's specific to climate risk, but he now is within Markets, our go-to climate risk SME, if you will. So I know I can get more information on what accreditation that is that he has, and how he went about it. Be happy to do that. But yeah, that's all. Not much more to add than that.
Yeah, there's a question that someone sent. They're looking to see if Citi has any roles that they can be applying to. So what's your take on that? I know you guys are not HR, and you're not representing Citi as we originally mentioned. Would you have any advice for someone looking to see if Citi has any roles that they could be looking into?
Yeah, so they can go to if you just go to citi.com and look at careers, there's a career website and you can apply, as there are at all other banks, right?
I do think
and
cities is one of the best though. So the search
yeah.
parameters are very good. Sorry, Marta.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, you know, the key thing when you're doing those kind of searches, like sometimes they'll reference the hiring managers. You can reach out to them on like LinkedIn, try to understand more, but you can often also see the same posting on LinkedIn sometimes too, which would be helpful. Then you can figure out who the manager is. But yeah, they have a very robust career website. But what I always say is like applying blindly on a career website in general is always like the big black box. So it's that you gotta meet the different people, get to know them, use LinkedIn networks, set up meetings with people, catch up. Or, you know, I have somebody that recently was looking at City and they sent me the job description and they asked me about the manager. And I was like, oh, I know that manager. Let me reach out on your behalf and mention because I knew the person well. So it really depends. I think sometimes in general, just applying for jobs on career websites can be a little bit of a black box because there's so many people applying, especially now that it's the great, you know, resignation where people are changing their careers. So I think those are even bigger black boxes now.
Yeah, there is one piece that the last question just added. Is Citi having any roles, not necessarily within the banking industry? I'm guessing what the person is trying to ask is, does Citi have any other partnerships with other people or other businesses outside of the banking area? And just your thoughts. Again, you're
Yeah, I
not
mean, City has
HR.
tons of roles. Like if you want to manage like City's like real estate services, like not to do with banking, there's like tech, there's everything that you could do at like any company that's not actually like you're in the corporate bank, or like you could be like supporting the bank in different roles. There's marketing, right? There's marketing at Citi. There's a
Yeah.
whole department that does
Right.
marketing and like, you know, marketing.
Yeah, I wouldn't know exactly how to go about identifying relationships you know, co-sponsoring that City does. You know, I'm sure a lot of that is public, but in terms of, you know, does Citi partner with, I don't know, right? I pick any organization. I'm sure they do, given the size of Citi's business. But I don't know necessarily how you might identify that. But to Marta's point, the really the amount of the size of the organization, right? There's a social net, there's within marketing, there's like a social networking team, right? That we get emails that often alert us to where Citi is being discussed within social media to advise of perhaps, you know, anything that might be going on about the business or the industry in general. So you know, you have people, you certainly have real estate individuals who certainly manage Citi's vast portfolio of real estate and properties around the world. There's, you know, it's not just about markets or investment banking or risk management. There are a great number of areas from where many backgrounds I think can fit into a banking organization.
Okay. All right. Any last questions before we wrap it up? I know we are 15 minutes past time. Okay. All right. Then I would say thank you so much for all those who were able to take the time to join today. And thanks most especially to the speakers, Martha and Alex, and all those who were able to ask the questions and those who were not. Someone just texted me, or at least just sent me a message. I am applying to jobs at Citi right now. So I guess we can definitely say that we've done a great job over here. So I want to say thanks. For those who want to reach out personally to ask any questions or curious to reach out to our speakers, you can definitely reach out to them on LinkedIn, or you can always come through me. I can definitely help facilitate that conversation as well. For next steps and other future sessions, we're looking into blockchain. So I'm working on that session as well. So for all those who are curious about it, who have heard about it, who have no idea what the heck it is, and what job opportunities are there, please feel, reach out. We will be talking about all things blockchain, where the world is going, what opportunities are there, and what can you do to get yourself a job in the next 5-10 years down the line. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks for supporting Sankofa virtual program.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.